Globally, the Congo has the highest numbers of women affected by sexual violence. 48 women are reported to be raped every hour of every day. Joining us now is Vava, who is the founder of Save the Congo. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. That is an extraordinary figure, that hard to believe.
It is extraordinary. I mean, the use of rape as a weapon of war in Congo has no parallel in the world or in history. I mean, essentially, militia gangs and warlords have used rape to displace people, to punish people, to destroy community. And this is often happens in rich mining town or areas. So it's incredibly, an extraordinary thing.
So the question, of course, is how do you change that sort of behavior in a country where there is no rule of law, no courts, and hardly any police?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the institutions of the state in Congo has absolutely collapsed. Now, one of the things that we are pushing forward at the moment is the creation of an international criminal tribunal for Congo. And it's astonishing that we are having this conference on sexual violence in London. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at the FCO and I met with officials. And sadly, actually, the FCO does not have a policy on whether or not they want to see those responsible for crimes against humanity, or crimes of rape in Congo, brought to justice. So it's extraordinary.
We're seeing pictures now of the conference, what can beautiful people, famous people, a long way from where the problem is in Congo, actually, how can they make a difference in Congo?
Well, a lot of ways. I mean, the first and foremost things, we are in this crisis because Paul Kagame of Rwanda has been supporting and funding militia groups and warlords in Congo. So the first step forward is to stop Kagame from funding and supporting militia groups in Congo. That's the first step forward. And the second one is by creating an international criminal tribunal for Congo. That's the only way we can actually hold those responsible into account. And in doing so, essentially, we send a powerful message to potential warlords and other criminals that if you try to rape in Congo, you will be brought to justice. Those are the only two steps forward.
But of course, this will depend a lot on African governments. I mean, they have to cooperate, in order to give you the access to their territory and perhaps work with whoever it is that's coming to apprehend those who have done this. What happens when African governments come back and say that we just don't have the resources?
Well, you're absolutely right. And the SCC, particularly in the manners in which it has been targeting African leaders, it has kind of, put loads of people off. However, we must not be complacent. I mean, the reality is the institutions of the state in Congo simply no longer exist. The legal system no longer exists. And the only way forward is by relying on international justice. So we need to come forward, whether to do it by choice, by asking the Congolese government, Kabila, who's essentially illegitimate, to do it, or either do it by force. We must force justice. We must hold those responsible to justice.
But it's very interesting you talk about justice, but even when in cases in Africa where they have been, been accused of war crimes, it's even very difficult. I mean, things that are designated as war crimes, it's so difficult to get the accused people to court. They just don't go.
Well, it's an amazing issue. I mean, let's look at Kenya. Violence within 2 days, and Kenya was referred to the ISIS because the US and the UK wanted to end violence in Kenya. Within a space of a week, the Kenyan case was at the ICC. In the Congolese case, this conflict has been going on since 1998 when Kagame sent his army into Congo, and virtually no one significant has been brought to justice. It's simply because there has been reluctance from the British government, from the US government, into bringing this case forward. But now we are seeing a change in mentality. The US has becoming forward, and the US wants to see the creation of an international criminal tribunal for Congo, and we need the UK, as well as the French and the EU, the German, to come forward equally.
Now, quickly, what would your message be to people who've been victims of sexual violence and who might be watching Arise News right now? What can they expect to see on the ground in about 6 months to a year from now as a result of this conference?
Well, the first message is you are not alone. Although we are not on the ground with you, we are with you in our soul and in our spirit. We will not rest until those responsible are brought to justice. That's the first message. That's what they need to know first and foremost. And the second one is, like or not, one way or the other, those responsible would be brought to justice. We will do whatever we can, even by removing mountains, to bring those responsible to justice. With the Congolese government or without the Congolese government, they will be brought to justice.
You talk about bringing to justice, but you know, then people still have to live with this. What about reparations? What about actually, you know, building these victims' lives up again?
It's an interesting dilemma you brought forward. I mean, it's not up to the British government or the US or the European to actually pay reparation to the Congolese women who have been raped. It's up to the Congolese state. And now the Congolese state essentially is not in existence. So when we have a government which is functioning, which is legitimate, perhaps this is another issue which we would love to push forward. Certainly, they ought to be supported in many ways to bring some sort of restoration of peace in their lives.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.